excited to introduce Jim because he's the first speaker that I've ever been aware of that's kind of insulted more than half of the audience. And he's got an uphill battle to win us over. So I'm very excited to see how he does that. Actually, you go by Keenan, correct? All right. Keenan is the CEO of Sales Guy Incorporated. He's an author and a popular blogger. I actually overheard a little conversation he was having with somebody this morning, and Jason had read his book and gave it to George, and George really loved it, and they insisted he come and speak here this weekend, which says a lot, because to win over Jason and George is a high compliment. So he will be speaking on how to embrace the changing landscape of the 21st century, including social media, how to access information, how to use the internet, and more. His book, Not Taught, which was just handed out, was recently published, and he's the father of 3 girls. Please welcome Keenan.
Look, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one moment that you captured, just let it slip. Yo, his palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on a certain...
Can you guys hear me? Not yet. Yes? No? Maybe? Kinda? Oh, there we go. Brilliant. All right. That's one of my favorite songs. Anybody know that song? Raise your hands, because I know you're all old. I know it. You are old as shit. I know it. I've seen the scores, so just live with it. But here's the plus. I'm old as shit, too. Like most of you, I was born in the 60s. So it's all good. No excuses. Off the table. Off the table. So I want to thank you guys for having me. I'm very excited. Hello. I really enjoyed the beginning. I actually listened. Marilyn, you're a great storyteller. Great storyteller. You reminded me of a story I wanted to add. Wasn't even in my presentation, but I'm going to add it because I think it's very relevant. Do you guys know the story about the monkeys and the banana? So this is a real study. Real study. They took I'm making up a number, 12 monkeys, put them in a cage or a big room, put a banana in the middle of the room tied to a string. Okay? Monkeys would go up, and if they pulled the banana, it would just gush the room with water. Soak them. Okay? Monkeys didn't like that. They'd freak out, run in a corner, and they'd sit when the water stopped. They'd settle in for a little while, and then they'd look at the banana again, and some idiot would go up and pull the banana and flood the room, and they'd all scatter, and they'd settle for a little while, and then another dumbass monkey would go into it, and finally they figured out, stop pulling the damn banana. Right? So then the scientists said, okay, they took 2 monkeys out, put 2 new monkeys in. These 2 new monkeys didn't know what happened, right? So what do you think they did? Walked over there, pulled that banana, flooded the place. Did that 1 or 2 times. The other monkeys, enough. So one of the new monkeys would go to pull it, and they beat the shit out of them. Bam. Okay. So after that started happening, they took 2 more monkeys out who had gone through both realms of this. And as a monkey, the new ones they put it would go to pull it. The other monkeys would go and kick the shit out of them. Well, they kept replacing all the monkeys until there were no monkeys in the place that ever saw it get flushed with water. But if a monkey went up to pull it, what do you think they did? Beat the crap out of them. Yet they didn't know why. We have a herd mentality. We have a tendency to do things because we've always done it. We watched other people do it. We have no freaking clue why we're doing it. So if I have my way today, we're going to break some of that. All right? So as I said, I'm Keenan. And I'm not too smart because Keenan's a lot more popular name than I like to realize. So getting it on all the social media networks is a big pain in the ass. So that's why I got all these different ones. But if you're not on social media, get on it. If you are, you can follow me in all these areas, and you can also find me on a Sales Guy. Okay, what do we want to do today? Anybody know this guy? He's a cool guy, by the way. Really cool guy. His name is David Dunning. Anybody heard of David Dunning? Anybody hear of the Dunning-Kruger effect? All right, it's going to be fun. How many of you in here think you're a really, really, really good loan officer, mortgage broker, mortgage banker, whatever title you call it. How many think you're really good? Created this thing called unskilled and unaware. And what he recognized is the people who are most, he did a study, and he asked people to take a test, and at the end of taking that test, he asked them how they did. And the people who did the worst thought they did the best. Interesting, huh? What he found was that we have an overinflated sense of self when we're actually not as good or not as competent. And the more competent we become, the less, not confident, but the less we overvalue or overassess our skills and abilities. Direct correlation. Actually, I'm a certified ski instructor for Vail. I've been skiing for a long, long time, and when people ask me if I ski, I'm like, I'm okay. And just how I feel, because I now know what really good skiing looks like. And it's hard. And I can't, there's a level 3 certification I haven't achieved yet. It's because it's hard. And I know that. If you had asked me when I was skied for like 3 or 4 years and started being able to do blacks and could do the whole mountain, if you had asked me, I was like, oh, I'm freaking awesome. Right? I sucked. But I didn't understand what greatness looked like. So from my small window, I didn't even have the capacity to recognize I wasn't as good as I thought I was. It's a really interesting paradigm. Right? Unskilled and unaware. We all suffer from it. So I wanted to set the table with this because I want you guys to understand, I want confidence, but you got to come in with a humility that says, I don't know what I don't know. I got to be prepared to grow, and I can't grow until I say I don't know. So you want to be a badass? Who here wants to be a badass? All right, anybody who didn't raise your hand, go outside. Seriously, go outside. There's a beautiful view with chairs. And you can sit in those chairs and you can just watch the view, check out your phone, and let those who stay here take care of business. So I'll ask one more time. Who wants to be a badass? I do. Oh, even hollering. All right, better. Well done. Beautiful. Good. Then get ready to change. Then get ready to change. We're in a different world, people. We're in an absolutely different world. It is not the world of days gone by. This is the greatest time for everybody in America than it's ever been. And tomorrow will be better than today, and that'll be better the next day. So stop looking to go back. There's nothing back there. It's not better. Right? I told a story last night about, some people already heard this, but we're talking about technology, and we're talking about change. We're going to talk a lot about that today. But to put in perspective, I was going to tell this later, but I'm going to tell it now, because I can. There was a man sitting on a fence around 1920, and he was talking to his neighbor. They're sitting there talking to each other and having a good conversation. Conversation's coming to an end. He's like, look, I got to go in. And his neighbor says to him, hey, look, we got to finish this conversation. Why don't you give me a call? And the old man looked at him and says, I am not calling you, and I'm not getting a phone, because I want to look you in the eye. I want to shake your hand. I want to touch your skin. I'm not talking on the phone. I can't see you. I'm not looking at a wall in a box listening to your voice. He's no different than every one of you sitting here saying, I don't need social media. Because who ever thought a phone was impersonal in this room? You were born into a phone. You never thought anything about it, and a phone was personal. Right? Anybody here think a phone's impersonal? Thank you. Who thinks social media is impersonal? Now you guys are hiding. Because I talked to some of you, I know you think social's impersonal. It's not. It's just you don't know it. Don't be the old man sitting on the fence. Don't be him. Don't be him. The world has changed. Does the world change, right? What makes the world really change? This right here. The industrial age, people, is over. Now, I love this picture because if you look really, really close, you can see George just in the background. Right? And it's a big deal. Not George in the background, but the industrial age is over. That's a big deal. Why is it a big deal? Because the rules of the industrial age have changed. The rules of the industrial age said, hey, You have a job. This is your job. Do it. The rules of the industrial age said, we have a hierarchy. I'm your boss. You work for me. You do it. The rules of the industrial age, for the most part, most of it, were rote jobs that didn't require a lot of thinking. Right? It was, here's your job, here's the instructions, do it this way. It was all about manufacturing. It was about efficiency and effectiveness. Am I right? Right? I mean, they even, shame on me, I always forget this guy's name, but they even created manager profiles that showed you how to manage people efficiently, everything about efficiency, because you were trying to squeeze everything out of a manufacturing job or something like that. Sales jobs were on the cusp, that's where they always thought we were weird, but the truth of the matter is everything was follow the instructions, follow the rules. My favorite quote, I don't pay you to think. Right? Where do you think that came from? The industrial age. That's how it was. Resumes. Everybody has a resume, right? Why did we have resumes? Anybody want to tell me? Lack of information. The only way I knew about you was a friend told me about you, or you sent me a resume. There was no LinkedIn. There was no way for you to market or advertise yourself using social media, so I had a resume. And I followed that. And what was on that resume? Experience. Why was experience on it? Because there was no way for me to garner or understand your expertise. So I just counted the years. So the lack of information drove us to these situations where we were bound by the lack of information, and we were bound by these rules. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this is when we mark an age, ages are cool, by the way. Y'all should be really lucky, because not everybody lives through an age change. You guys know that? My grandfather was born in the industrial age, died in the industrial age. Period. Right? What was before the industrial age? Anybody remember? Agriculture, right? The agrarian society. When we moved from the agrarian age or the agrarian society to the industrial age, things changed. And if you wanted to be successful in the industrial age, you had to change with it. Did you not? What was the number one change from the agrarian society to the industrial age that marked us all the way up till now? Who said that? Who said education? Yes. Yes. Education, right? Why do you think all of a sudden from about 1920s to 2000s we kept getting more and more people into school, and the idea was go to school, get an education. You know, you had these guys, parents who either grew up in farms and moved in, and these guys right here who took these industrial jobs and didn't want their sons or daughters doing that. They said, go get an education. Right? That's what it was about. That was the big switch. If you didn't get an education, you never sat on the top of the industrial heat. Well, now we're changing again. There's a new set of rules. Now this one isn't as stark, but the plus is there are no gatekeepers. The industrial age had gatekeepers. It kept you from getting, you had to work your butt off until you knew access was critical. Why do you think wealthy families did so well? So I could connect you with. Why do you think Ivy League schools did so well? I mean, they still do so well, but back then, if you got an Ivy League school education, it was less about the education, the fact who you got to run around with. Family names meant somebody. Meant something. I mean, look, with all due respect to anybody's family name, and I love my name, I go by it, right? But truth of the matter is now people give a shit about your last name. 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, names meant something, you met people places. There was massive gatekeeping. Now we're in the information age, and it's wide open. Why is it wide open? Everybody has access to it. Information. Information is everywhere. Everywhere. There's nothing you can't get. Nothing. It's so odd. I was just watching a video this morning, and this woman said, no matter what you want to do, if you want to start a school in Africa, if you want to start a zombie school, if you want to, learn how to make a quilt that fits a car, you can find it on the internet. Someone's done it already, and they've put it on there. So you don't have to make it up on your own. You can play follow the leader all day long if you want. Everything we want is here now. So the question is, are we going to take advantage of it? Right? The question is, are we going to go for it? The question is, are you going to go for it? Right? I'm going to piss you all off a little because I know I can't stereotype or generalize, but I'm going to do it. The handful of people I talked to last night, within 2 minutes of social media, they started telling me why they're too old, or why I don't need it, or why it's a bad thing. Like right out of the box. Like, Heisman, stay over there. Right? I'm like, wow, this is going to be a tough crowd. And one of the whole arguments is, I'm old. I'm like, serious? Serious? I'm old? What is it? Can someone tell me, I'm going to break from my thing here. Can someone please tell me, some brave soul, tell me why age has anything to do with this? Honestly, let's have an honest, yes. But why do you think my 10-year-old daughter is excited about learning? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It's an excuse. Okay, now we're getting closer. Yes. There is no reason. He says there is one. Can anybody give me one? How age has anything to do with this?
Old habits.
Okay, they're old habits. Okay, so the barrier is higher than my daughter because she has no habits. It requires change. We don't like change. My daughter has to change all the time. Shit's new every day, right? So she's changing constantly. So it's interesting. These are all good barriers, but they're not the reasons. Learning curve. Okay, learning curve's tough.
Fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. All good. But how is this stuff, like, how is it old people somehow have a lock on this shit? I mean, seriously, I don't get it. Yeah, I don't get it. Why do you guys think you have a lock on fear and change? I mean, come on. And you call the millennials entitled? Holy shit. Seriously? Are you kidding? Wow. Wow. You were good.
It's a limiting belief.
I'm sorry?
It's a limiting belief.
It absolutely is a limiting belief. And I think he said it best. This is an excuse. Cut it out. Cut it out. And I'm going to tell you a little story when I was a kid. And someone keep me on time because I'm on tangents right now, so I got to make sure I get through this shit. I don't know what it was. I really don't know what triggered it. But I remember when I was about, 13 or 14, there was some hip song on the radio. I probably didn't use the word hip back then either, but it was cool. This was in the 80s, by the way. Early 80s, maybe late 70s. We'll go early 80s. And my dad didn't know who it was. And it wasn't like it was some obscure, radical punk rock. It was top 40 bubblegum something. He didn't know what it was. And I remember saying to myself, why does that happen when you get old? And literally, it was a conscious question I asked myself. And I couldn't answer it, but I said, I'll tell you this, Jim. I still call myself Jim back then. I said, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be that guy. I am not going to let age prevent me from knowing what the cool fashions are, or knowing what the cool music is, or knowing what's coming. I'm not going to be that guy. Cut that out. Okay? Let's cut that out. So where are we going here? You get to decide, and no permission is required. This is what I love about this. Okay? Back in the day, you needed permission. You need permission everywhere. So for instance, back in the day, to market yourself before the social networks, you had to go to someone in corporate and say, well, you couldn't really market yourself, but you had to ask them permission to create the marketing material, to do this or do that, because either it was cost prohibitive or you didn't have the tools. That's not the case anymore. You can go and build an entire business on your own, leveraging all these free resources by being just a damn good person, a nice person. The reason I'm standing on this stage right now is because in 2009 I made one decision. I decided to start blogging. And it wasn't because everybody else was blogging. I mean, people were blogging, but it wasn't like it is now. And the reason I said that is because my career had gone so fast that I couldn't compete on paper with people who had the same level of responsibility as I did. I was managing $300 million in revenue, sales team 125, 150 nationwide, and I was 33. I couldn't, and I had been working for 4 years. I couldn't compete because most of those people been doing it 15, 20, 30 years. They were in their 40s, 50s, early 60s. So I was like, well, this is a cluster. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start blogging. And for every day, for 2 years, I blogged about how you run sales teams, how you hire salespeople, how you build sales processes, how you create governance plans. I mean, I just, every day, sprinkled it with a little of, motivation and stuff like that in my own voice. Within 2 years later, people reaching out saying, hey, we had that problem, read this, loved this, started being recognized as named top social blogger and social salesperson and top sales blog and blah, 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 all this funky stuff. Boom! Got laid off in a merger, had one choice. Spend 6 months, 8 months trying to find another executive sales leadership position. Spend 6 months, 8 months trying to grow the consulting practice. You know which route I chose. No permission required. There are no gatekeepers. But you have to matter, and that takes work. That takes work. What do I mean by that? You got to build a brand around yourself that articulates your value. This is where the teaching starts. Enough of the pontification, right? This is where the teaching starts. Why should I give a shit about you as a loan officer? Why do I care? Seriously, and I say it that harsh on purpose because sometimes I don't think it sinks into people's heads. Oh, I'm good, I'm nice, I do good service. Now, you got to get real honest with yourself and ask, when somebody finds me, how different am I from all the other loan officers? And how quickly can they figure that out? And how well can I articulate that? Because that's your brand, right? How many people here use Gain laundry detergent? Damn, see? Know your audience beforehand. So, oh my gosh, anybody heard of Gain? Okay, whew, thank you. How many of you heard of Gain like 7, 8 years ago? Yeah, it's gaining in popularity. Does anybody notice that? It's totally gaining in popularity. Why? Because they did this thing, they focused on smell. They stopped trying to compete on clean clothes. But really, if you look at their packaging, it's all about how it smells. It actually smells really good. Right? Am I right? Right? See, right? So they said, look, there's Tide, which is the big one. Everybody knows Tide, right? And there's Era, I think, and Cheer. I think those are the 3 big ones, right? Well, they got hip and they said, well, we can try to be the cheap one, which is not very expensive, or we can be the cheap one that smells really, really good. And people like to smell really, really good. So, you know, that's the brand. So now I used to be a Tide guy, and I don't know how I switched. Somewhere along the line I switched. So when I walk in, you can have it all there, but I see that green jug. Boom, we're going home. Right? Because it smells good. Okay, so they figured out what their brand is. They figured out their King Midas effect. Everybody know King Midas? Who does? Yes, okay. I thought everybody knew that, but maybe it's millennials. I asked a couple kids, like, huh? I'm like, oh, God. Kid who works with me didn't know who Ted Williams was. I was like, oh, my God, I am officially old. Whew. He's like, who? Did he play football? I'm like, oh, Jesus. So you got to know your King Midas effect. And I love this. I really do. Because although King Midas was... Anybody know the whole story? It's actually a sad story. Does everybody know the whole story? Yes, we talk about the golden touch. Everything you touch turns to gold. And we think, ooh, everything I touch turns to gold. But we forget the second half of the story is he was a greedy old bastard. And he wished for it. And he wished for everything he touched. And his daughter runs up to him and gives him a big hug. And she turns to gold. Not kind of the best story in the world at the end of the day. But we always lop that side off and go to, So what do you touch? And this is a real question. I know I'm using a metaphor. But really, I want everybody to take 2 seconds and think. And I'm going to be quiet for 2 seconds, which is almost impossible. And ask yourself, what do you touch that turns to gold? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Right? It could be the experience, right? It could be the approach. Like, I don't know. Right? What I know is when I used to sell, what I touched, what turned to gold was I was always the top of the leaderboard. I came into a company, shit got sold. Period. End of discussion. Now, it's kind of a bull in the china shop, so that was the other side, right? But that's what I did. When I left, that's what people would say. So a way to ask yourself what your King Midas touch is, ask yourself, when I leave a situation, when I leave a job, what are people saying about me? What are they saying that I did that made that place amazing? I think yours is leadership, by the way. You were very good. Yeah, you're a level. Anybody read Good to Great? I get the impression you're a level 5 leader. George is a level 5 leader. Man, the most humble guy in the world. Oh, he's a human servant. Am I right? Oh my God. He keeps coming up and asking me, how do you want to do this? How do you want to do that? And I'm like, hey dude, I'm your bitch for the next 24 hours. You tell me. I mean, you tell me, right? You bought me for 24 hours. Whatever you want, baby, I'm here. But he's so thoughtful. But I'm going to push you a little. Those are just traits. You have to ask yourself, what do they empower? And what is the impact and effect of those? That's what turns to gold. Okay? So that's your touch. Right? Those things you said, that's your touch. But you have to bring those to life. You have to bring those to something that provides results. Right? So my energy, my brain, which we will not get into, how I break down problems, that's what made me a good salesperson. Uncanny knack of solving problems and asking questions. But those weren't my golden touch. It's what I did with those is what turned to gold. Make sense? So you guys got to brand yourself. Okay? The key to success in the 21st century is to build a brand you and promote the shit out of it. Everybody's got to know. I love that he's writing that down. That's freaking awesome. That's great. A guy who could have fought in the Korean War is writing down, promote the shit out of it. I freaking love that. How good is that, man? Woo! Oh, my job is done. Oh, my. Right? All right, in preparation for this, and I do this too, and poor Holly, she was awesome. She kept saying, okay, we need your presentation, we need your presentation. I'm a procrastinator, but I'm also an emotional guy. I have a hard time doing certain things logically. Now this is if my ex-wife was sitting here, she'd go berserk hearing me say this because she thinks I'm too logical. But I need to be emotionally connect with things. And if something is too far out, I can't emotionally connect with it. It's not here, I'm too in the moment. So I do my presentations, I start them, but it's like 20%, 30% done like 3 days before, and then 50% like the day before the last 50%. But the plus of that is I read stuff that I wouldn't have seen right beforehand. And I read this paper, it was fascinating. And it says, if you're not getting better, you're not getting worse. You're getting worse. So let this sink in, people. This is a really big deal. And I don't really know if it's true, but I'm going to steal this anyways. This is an interesting example of the law of relativity. This gentleman asked the question, Ted Williams, there he comes again. He asked the question, why has no one hit 406? Or hit 400 in baseball since Ted Williams, since 1940-something. So he had to ask the question. And he said, well, all the players are getting better, so you would think someone would. And what he realized, and I'm going to do this quick, is the bell curve for really good athletes, the mean and really bad athletes, was broad. So even though you had a medium of really good athletes, you had some phenomenal ones, but you had a lot more bad ones. That's even the right grammar. Now with training and adding blacks to baseball and recruiting out west, because back when he did it, almost 80% of all players came from the Northeast. But once you added blacks and then you added players from the west and then you started training and better coaching and all that, the deviance shrunk. So you didn't have as many bad players. So luck played less of a role. If you have bad players, you have luck. He doesn't get to the ball fast enough, so one extra ball falls in for Ted Williams. That does not fall in today. You have one extra pitcher in that duel where he doesn't throw as good, he throws more junk. So you have a better chance. And so what the argument says is this. If everybody's getting better, you have to get better too. Because if you're staying the same, they're passing you. And he used an example of a company that in the 1990s said they want to improve the inventory turns from 3.5 to 5.1. Anybody knows about inventory turns? It's money's caught up. You want to move inventory as quickly as possible. And they did it! And they were thrilled. Only to find out later that their competition had gone from 4.5 to 8.1. Right? So you have to be moving. You have to be improving. You have to be getting better. Getting better in an absolute sense doesn't matter if it's offset by the competition. Right? If you think that nobody here is trying to beat you, where's Scott and John? Raise your hands. Aren't they the number 1 and 2 on the app? Those guys going crazy. They're running around trying to beat the shit out of each other, right? There you go. I mean, that lead goes back and forth, right? Proof positive. Half of you chose, forget, I'm not even going to play the game. But, right? This is your job. You chose this. Everybody chose this job, right? You didn't pick anybody else and force them to do it, right? So if you're going to choose to do something, I've always thought this should be a two-part, it's a two-part question for odd reasons, but I think it should be a one-part question. Go hand in hand. If you're going to choose to do something, then by definition in my world, you just chose to be the frickin' best at it. And if you didn't, then again, there's the door. There's some great chairs looking at a great view. Don't choose to do something not to choose to be the best at it. And I see some of you getting uncomfortable. I see some of you out there, I know. Sorry. Sorry. What do you want me to say? Blame me, right? You must be in business. Now it's my fault. Right? George came up to me. I love George. George came up to me and said, "You said I suck." In that survey, right? And I said, "Oh, you know," quieter than I say now. I said, No. You said you suck. I didn't tell you what to answer. Right? So guys, it's like I tell my daughters. You choose to do something, choose to be really freaking good at it. And if you're not, it's okay. Go find something else. But I'm going to operate from here the rest of the way that you really want to be badasses. Deliberate learning. What an amazing time. Information is there for you. And for whatever particular reason, you're opting out. And look, I'm a full-on technologist. I get it. But man, I love reading. I did a blog post a long time ago that said, if you're ever stuck, the best thing you can do is read. Every time I read, I get energized and I learn something like, oh my God, I could use this. Even if I'm reading crazy stuff, but I learned from that. And I'm like, oh, look what he did. And all of a sudden I think, oh, I could do that over here. So if you're not reading, you've basically quit. I don't care if you have kids, I don't care if you go on vacations, I don't care if you have best friends. If you're not reading, you've quit. Deliberate learning is learning on steroids. But if I could push you a little further and teach you guys to say, you know what, I'm going to build a deliberate learning path. So, look, we've always been taught learn, grow, education is key, and I'm a big fan of that. But what I've learned as I got older is we only have so much time in the day. So one of the best things we can do is be very deliberate in what we want to learn. And the only way you can be deliberate in what we want to learn is what? Not know what we don't know. I'm sorry, know what we don't know. I got to self-assess. If I'm going to deliberately learn, I'm going to pick the things I want to learn that are going to make the biggest impact in my life. Right? That's called deliberate learning. Right? I'll tell you a funny story real quick. When I got married, my wife had been married before, and she had 2 kids. So I realized, okay, this is different. This is a perfect example of deliberate learning, not for business. And I said, oh, this is different. It's not what I envisioned. I had said I would never, ever marry someone with kids. But if you saw her, you would say, oh, I get it. And, right? And I got a book on how to work through, what they called at the time, blended families. I started reading all about blended families. That's deliberate learning. It's saying, I don't know something. I want a desired outcome. So I'm going to learn it. Now, I didn't learn it that well because I'm now divorced, but that's another story. It might not last half as long, right? But that's deliberate learning. You have to self-assess and ask yourself, what don't I know? What am I not good at? Where are there gaps in my knowledge? And what am I going to do about it? All right, so now we'll have a little more fun. Now that I beat the snot out of you. Who is this guy? William Randolph Hearst. Anybody know who he is? Okay. What did he do? Newspapers, magazines, media. Now again, let's make America great again and talk about the fact that he lied in his papers all the time and he knew it. He had such reach that he tried to influence politics by planting stories. Well, hey, that was the times. But it is what it is. But he could do it because why? What made him so powerful?
He bought the barrel.
I'm sorry?
He
bought ink by the barrel.
He bought ink by the barrel, but yes. But why could he buy ink by the barrel?
He had a huge audience.
Oh! He had the biggest audience in the world. If you don't think reach is worth anything, those chairs down front are waiting for you again. Those chairs are waiting for you. Reach is arguably the greatest asset other than maybe oil and banking, and oil is going the wrong direction. In the 1920s, he was one of the richest men in the world. One in every 4 people in the country read his papers. And, what is it when you can't read? Quick. Literacy, no. Illiteracy, yeah, thank you. I don't know, we had a much larger illiterate population back then, right? So if you really think about it, if we switch this to 1 in every 4 in the population to 1 in every person that could read, right? And then you guys too, no. Then we would have, I mean, he touched everybody. He touched everybody. And what did that translate into? One of the richest people in the world. Yes, power and influence. So here's the cool part. We get to do that today. There are no gatekeepers. You can build your own sphere of influence to the tune of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and if you're so lucky, millions. There are no gatekeepers. Look, most of us, we did it back in the day. We had our church friends, we had our work friends, and we had whoever we ended up in our contact list. Is that right? How many of you live by most of that right now? How many of you say 90% of your sphere of influence sits in one of those buckets, or all of them? Don't bullshit me. Right? Those of you who didn't raise your hand, is it somewhere else? I know, some of you just aren't going to raise your hand. I get it. I get it. I get it. Yes, but not many of us are taking advantage of it. How many people, in the last year, how many people have you met online that you haven't met in person that you could call a friend right now? Not including dating sites. 20 or 30.
I'm very active. I just network. There's a lot of value there.
So 20 or 30, is that high or not high?
That's not high.
Okay, but you're doing it. I would say 80% of the people I've met in the last 4 years, I'll say when I was 5 years, 80% at least, I've met online. I was at 50%, and when I say this, I mean, not including dating sites, when I say this, right, I don't mean like, oh, so-and-so. I mean like, if I see them at a conference, or I see them somewhere, it's a hug for the first time. Oh my God, we finally met. You have the chance to grow massive audiences now. And again, if you don't think a massive audience helps you, I can't help you. I can't. I can tell you, but it does. This isn't even close. This is how we did it. It's not even close anymore. You got to go for this. Seriously. This idea of privacy, and I know some of you are processing this right now. I should give more love to this side of the room, huh? I know you guys are talking about this idea of privacy. I don't want someone looking at me, and I don't want this, and I don't want that. Cut it out. Cut it out. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you one example why this whole privacy discussion is bullshit. I'm going to go back to, okay, anybody here older than 20 in the 1980s? They were older than 20 in the 1980s. Okay, so I get enough people. So in the 1980s, if you were at the park with your family or your friends, or you were at an event somewhere, and someone from the newspaper took your picture and put that shit on the front page, how many of you were excited and showed all your friends? Thank you. There is nothing private about that at all. Okay? Nothing private. And not only did you like it, you felt proud and you were excited that a picture of you and your kids walking through the park with their names in the caption was all over the paper. Am I telling the truth? How private is that? Come on. Right? And you didn't even get to control that. But yet you're going to sit there and tell me that, oh, I got to be private. I don't want to put too much information out there. Really? What synapse stopped firing? Enough with the privacy business. Here's the best part. You get to control it. No one's asking you to put naked selfies out there. Right? I mean, you get to control it. No one says you got to take a picture of your bank account and put that out there. You get to control it. But you need to be out there. You need to be seen. You need to build your reach. You need to build social capital. And the way you do that is by providing service, by providing value. You build reach by providing value. Value. How do I, go back to the brand, right? What's my brand? And what value does my brand present? Again, we couldn't do this in the industrial age. If you were the best loan officer here, how did anybody outside of here know that? Anyone? A little bit of word of mouth, maybe? They really didn't, right? They didn't. Now, everybody can know. And they can know not because you say, oh, I'm the best loan officer at Mason-McDuffie. It's because you exhibit it by creating content, which we'll talk about in a minute, and promoting this brand value of you, which builds social capital. Anybody remember the question that said, if you make a request on social media, what are the chances of somebody responding? You guys remember that question? There's a real reason I asked that question. It measures your social reach. Guy Kawasaki, anybody heard of him, Guy Kawasaki? He's a author, and he used to work at Apple, and he's a really well-known guy. He has massive reach, to the tune of millions. He went to he was about to do a speech like this somewhere, and he forgot his power adapter to his iBook, his MacBook, whatever the hell it is. And he went on Twitter and said, oh my gosh, I got to finish my presentation, forgot my charger. Anyone have one? He was in a different town. 4 people responded. I live 10 minutes away, I live 20 minutes away, I live 5 minutes away, I got one. That's reach, that's social capital. And you guys will get this little metaphor or simile. Social capital is like credit. You better build it before you need it. You better build it before you need it. And all of those people who lost their jobs and were looking for work during the Great Recession, who had never built a LinkedIn profile, had no exposure beyond their church and their friends, they were looking for a job a shitload longer than those people who had built years of social capital. Build social capital. Get creative, engage. The size and reach of your sphere of influence will determine your success in the 21st century. Look, I get it. Some of you are here in the last part, however you define that. I get it, and you're just going to coast to the end. I get it. But those of you who want to go higher and be bigger, or that are younger, that's going to be critical. It's going to be absolutely positively critical. The size and reach of your sphere of influence will determine your success. I said that. It's time to prove your worth. That's how you build reach. Because I'm not just talking about going out there and just saying, hey, yo, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm talking about going out there and trying to create value. How do you create value? You create really good content. And the best way to do that is educate. How many of you in your plan have a section around education? Good. Education, guys, is powerful. Other than the fact that I'm crazy, why do you think I'm up here talking to you right now? Yes. And what do I have to know? Well, okay, it's a tricky question when you make it a question. What George recognized was, I know something you don't. And wanted me to give that to you. So therefore, I had value. Your ability to position yourself as a loan officer who knows things that other loan officers don't know, or who knows things that the average consumer doesn't know, creates value. Do we all understand that? Guys, it's one of those things that's not talked about very often. Knowledge gaps are value propositions. Think about that. Why do people pay me? Okay, let me phrase that. Why do people pay Vail, Colorado, $900 a day to get me to ski with them? No, not because I'm good at it. Close. I know what they don't know. Right? I know what they don't know. They say, hey, you have something I don't have. That's knowledge. I want that knowledge. I need that knowledge to get to here. I will pay you $900 a day for that. By creating content that teaches and educates your target audience, you increase the probability that you're perceived as having more value than somebody else. Now, when I mean create content, you can start a blog, a YouTube channel, a podcast, write a book, write on LinkedIn once a day, once a week, I don't care. But start creating content that educates your target market. I have a whole section on A Sales Guy U, which is my website, called A Sales Guy U. And all it is filled with ebooks on teaching people how to do things. My most recent ebook, How to Do a Kick-Ass Demo. In the technology space with new applications, people have to do demos of the application. It's really popular these days. And so I wrote this, and I'm getting, like 100, 150, 200 downloads a day of this one ebook. So I get their numbers, their names, we're talking to them. I'm building reach. I'm building an audience. It's people who know who I am. People are instituting what I've taught them into their sales organizations. I have competition who's not doing that. I'm winning. Right? Forbes called me up one day and said, hey, we need someone to write about sales. Will you write for us? Why did they do that? Because they read my stuff. I built reach. I built credibility. My content is pulling people in. My content is differentiating me from everybody else. But here's the deal. It's hard, people. Back to the brand and back to learning and back to reading. I know that's a tough word for all you guys. But you can't create good content if you're not reading. All right, now you can't answer this question, but I'm going to mess with this group. Anybody here know the difference between the debt and the deficit? I said you couldn't answer. Okay. Now honestly, I'm not trying to pick on you, but this was powerful. Okay? So when we always talk about the federal deficit and the federal debt, how many people, and be honest, we're all friends here, hugs, if I was standing, I'd drink with you, make you feel better, think they're the same? How many truly know the difference? So why is no one raising their hand? Okay, I'll tell you the difference, because no one's raising their hand. You got to read to learn about this stuff. The debt is the accumulation of the deficit year over year over year. So I have $100 that I get paid, and I spend $110, and I got to borrow for that 10, that's $10 in debt and $10 in deficit. But the next year, let's say I spend 20 more than I have, my deficit is now 20, and my debt is now 30. The reason I tell you this is you got to read to learn this stuff, and the press keeps telling you, the deficit's going down, and half of you argue, no, it's not. Well, it actually is going down. We're spending, the gap between what we're spending and what we don't have is less. And the only way you get to a positive debt is you got to shrink the deficit first. It's one step at a time. You shrink the deficit, and eventually you get to a positive, then you can start chipping away at the debt. We don't know this because we don't read. We just watch TV and let Fox or CNN tell us what we should think. Then we start parroting it. Stop it. Maybe I shouldn't use political ones, but oh well, you'll get over it. Because I know you're thinking it. I know it connects to you all. That's what I know for sure. So you got to read. You got to educate yourself. You got to teach yourself. You got to be submerged in content to create content. You become smarter. You become more valuable. Your impact to your customer. Let's get right there. Let's jump to the end because I know you get that. Your customer appreciates you more if you know more and you can solve more problems and you can deliver more value. And that's why you're here, to deliver value to your end customer. So start creating content. Learn how to create content. There's no gatekeepers. We couldn't do that 20 years ago. Could you? You could not. The only way you could do is create a book, and if you created a book, you had to go through a gatekeeper, right? Or you had to pay to get it done. No way to distribute. You couldn't buy it on Amazon. So there's massive gatekeepers. You couldn't do it. You could do it now. Difference between the industrial age and information age. You can become a guru and be perceived as a guru. Never say you are one, though. Never. Let other people tell you that. But you can become a guru, be perceived as a mortgage loan officer guru, and teach the world today and drive 10, 100, 1,000, 100,000, million people to your site, to your content, to who you are. If you can provide the value. You provide the value by having a goal of becoming a guru. Maybe some of you should sit with him every once in a while and ask him how, here, I know this happens all the time, and I'm really going on a limb now, probably another glove don't fit. He just said the market's going to keep going. I know that most people, when they're looking to buy houses these days, they're always asking, are mortgage rates going to go up? Are they going to go up? Most of you will parrot what you've heard. Few of you really understand what drives these changes, what the external impact is, so that you can actually not just say yes or no because what he told me, but you can walk them through some of the things that cause that, and then you can address those. So this causes that, and let me tell you what's happening there. So you don't sound like every other person, you sound more knowledgeable, but you got to put in the work. You got to read, or at least talk to him. Because if I were a loan officer, my first goal, besides being the top of that chart over this weekend on that app, is to know more than every single one of you. I'd want to know more than every single one of you, and I'd want to eat your lunch in the world of knowledge. Knowledge wins. Become a guru, but don't call yourself one. This is one that I'm sure is going to frustrate a lot of you, because it's what we were taught. If I ask you, hey, why are you good? Oh, I got 10 years experience. Stop it. From this day on, don't ever tell me your experience is why you're good. Because I call bullshit. Because for every person that's got 20 years experience, 50 of them got, or 50% of them got 10 years expertise attached to that experience. Right? They do something for 20 years and they do the same thing every day and they don't learn, they don't read, right? They don't grow, they don't become experts, they just do the same shit over and over. And say, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years, I'm an expert. No, you're not. No, you're not. Don't focus on experience anymore. I don't care about your experience. What I want to know is what's your expertise. That can be built. That can be developed. Experience just marks time, right? Marks time. Anybody disagree? Experience is a time marker. And what we've done as a society is we've attached things to that moniker. We've said, oh, they got 30 years experience, so they're good. Really? I know people that are working at the DMV for 30 years. I'm just saying. Right? I'm just saying. So the question is, the minute we get off this moniker of I've got experience in this time marker, and I know it's hard for you because we're older. We've been doing it for a long time. We want to take pride in that. We want to use that. But I'm not letting you. Put it away. Ask yourself, what's my level of expertise? Am I an expert in my field? Here's how you know. There are good doctors, 20 years experience, right? I mean, yes, 20 years experience, right? But they're not the doctors changing the medical field. It's the doctors with 20 or 30 years experience or even 10 years experience, but 10 times the amount of expertise that are saying, hey, wait, I'm going to change the way we do this surgery. I'm going to invent a new tool. I'm going to invent a new method. You can't do those things without expertise. The depth of knowledge that they bring to the table that allows them to change the game. That's expertise. And the cool part is you control that. You get to decide how much expertise you absorb, how deep you go into your business, how deep you go in your knowledge. You get that. And that's not time bound. Because guess what? I can start to be a loan. I can say, you know, I had so much fun with you guys. Yo, man, you got to hire me. I quit. I want to be a loan officer. And then 1 year, I got 1 year experience. I can't make that go any faster, and I can't make that go any slower, can I? But what I accomplish in that 1 year, how much expertise that I can absorb in 1 year, now that I control. And I want to be the guy with 5 years experience and 20 years expertise. How many of you don't have to answer, but answer for yourself. How many of you have your expertise outpaced your experience? That's a tough question. Good for you. But normally it's not the case. I'm going to let that sit. Not many of us have allowed our expertise to outpace our experience. It's too hard. Okay, the peak of positive return. This is a way you can get there. I came up with this about 8 months ago. And I came up with it through my own personal experiences. I'm a mogul skier. I love mogul skiing. To most of you guys, I'm really good. I mean, I will point them straight down the hill and have a blast. But when I start comparing myself to people who compete, and I have a good friend who was in the Olympics for Canada, and he's 4th in the world right now, and I've skied with Mikhail Kingsbury, who took silver in the Sochi Olympics. I skied with them this winter. Oh my God. Phenomenal. And I have been practicing and practicing and practicing, and I can't get to where I want to get. And it hit me. The way getting better works is when you first start something, you don't have to put much time in to see big gains. Right? I use skiing a lot because it's the most visual and I'm exposed to it. But I see people who've never skied in their life, and within 3 or 4 days, like, oh my God, I went out on the main mountain and I got down to blue, and right? 3 days. And it feels great. Or people just hate it out of the box and they quit. So they're quitters. But once you get past the quitters, like, I like this, and you're doing it and you're having fun with it, you don't have to put in a lot of work to get better. It feels really good, doesn't it? No matter what you're doing, you go out and do it for a day, you go experience it, and you got this much better. Or as you get a little better, you go out and do it for a couple of weeks, and you're getting this much better. But then it happens. It switches. And you go out for a while and you don't get very good. You don't see the improvement. A lot of people call it the plateau. But I don't like that term. What I say is you've passed the peak of positive return. And now you're in the stage that says, I have to work harder to get better than I'm getting returns. More effort, less return. And that's when you actually start winning. But most people quit when they get there. They quit because the feel-good is gone. The short-term benefits are gone. Right? They got to keep working and working and working, and didn't get better to get better. Oh, I got better a little. Whew, that was a lot of work. So those dabblers, most of us live in the dabbler world and everything. Few people get into the hobbyist zone where all of a sudden it flips, and I'm going to work a little harder because I love it so much. I have so much fun. I'm so passionate about it that I'm going to do it more even though I don't get anything in return or as much in return. But it keeps getting worse because I put myself in the professional zone just to the left because I don't ski for a living, but I ski, And let me tell you how hard it is for me to get better. It frustrates me. If I didn't love skiing and just being on the skis, I would go insane. Because it's hard. Ask yourself, how often do you quit the minute you get past the peak of positive return? And here's the killer. If you're in a job and it's what you get paid to do, it's not okay to quit there. That's when we get into coast. And that's 90% of people I see, and I'm sorry everybody, because you're the top thing, so mostly I'll say maybe a small portion of you. But I see it. People that work for me, places I've worked, that's why big companies are never as good as startups. Because most of the world plays there. It just gets too hard. So I'm doing my job. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to go any further. Right? Cut it out. Get honest with yourself. Stop playing past that peak. Think. This is something that's changed a lot since the Industrial Revolution, or since the Industrial Age. Changed a lot. Because companies are desperate for thinkers now. It used to be just the top people solved the problem, told everybody else what to do. It's not like that anymore. And I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to move past this really quick, but it's a great story. My aunt's a mortgage broker. She got an appraisal where they dinged it $30,000 from the listing price. I know you guys are like, oh, I get all this, right? They dinged it $30,000 from the listing price because it was near an airport, the Gibson Airport in Gibson, Colorado, just down the street from Vail. And my aunt was not happy about that. So she sat down and says, okay, how do I fix this? She thunk. She didn't accept it. And that's what most people do. They accept it. Oh shit, it came in low. I don't know what to do. Sorry. They'll go back to the seller. You need to bring the price down. It's not appraising. You'll never sell it, right? They'll do something. They'll follow some set of rules or do what everybody else did. My aunt said, not having that. So she went to the airport and went online and found the flight patterns. Got topography maps. Wait, I wrote this down. What else did she do? This was interesting. Topography maps, flight times, and flight patterns, and flight frequency, and mapped it to the house. And she found out that the house is north of the airport, but the flights take off south of the airport, and there are only 9 flights coming in and out. So she went back to the appraiser and said, how did you come up with this? It is immaterial. That's thinking, right? That's thinking. That's saying, wait a minute, I'm not going to accept the status quo. I'm going to process the information in front of me, and I'm going to think about an alternative solution. I'm going to solve this problem. Now, the story turns out, unfortunately, that the appraiser didn't change his appraisal, but the people who she was doing a loan for were so appreciative that she pushed so hard that they found a new house and refused to switch and kept her, and she closed the deal anyways. Right? That's thinking. Too many of us are operating on autopilot today, and when faced with a difficult problem, we don't think. And I promise you, I talk about it in my book, I see it all the time. And every one of you do it. Stop it. All right, I better pick up the pace. I'm seeing people look at their watches, so I must be losing you. Am I losing you? All right. All right. Yeah, right? Change. The next thing you got to do in the 21st century. Listen, change is happening so fast. Does anybody debate that, how fast change is happening? Companies, $1 billion companies are being created in less than 2 years. You know how long it took to build $1 billion company back in his day? Right? It took forever. So part of the reason back in the industrial age why we didn't need to change is because change was bad. Because things took so long to get going, it took so long to get things working, that if you made the wrong change, you couldn't recover very quickly. So status quo was what we held on to. Not anymore. Ask BlackBerry about that. Ask Nortel about that. Ask the taxi companies about that with Uber. Ask the hotel industry with Airbnb. Change is like this. You have to be a change acceptor. I mean, there's 3 types of change people. Change resistors, acceptors, and creators. 65% of you said you're change creators. Give yourself a round of applause. Come on, give me a right. 88% of you don't create content on the web. Bullshit, you're change creators. I was blown away. I'm like, what change are you creating? The biggest change sitting in front of you is social media and the information age and the internet. And most of you are barely following, never mind creating it. You're kidding yourselves. Change is so critical. There was a survey in 2010 with the 1,500 CEOs around the world, and their biggest issue and fear was that they don't have the talent to navigate today's complex world, that people are not prepared to solve the problems that they're faced with. Basically what they're saying is there's a vote of no confidence for the majority of the people in America, or the world. No confidence. Most of it driven by their inability to change. Stay ahead of the curve. Come on guys, you can do better. You have to be change creators. Have to be. All right, here's the next one. I'll let you guys read that. This is me listening to you tell me how hard you worked and you still didn't get it done. Back in the industrial age, how hard you worked mattered. That's what we cared about, right? Come in, work your ass off, punch the climb block, work really hard. Now, no one cares. Do you care if anybody here works their butt off but never sells any mortgages? You don't care, do you? And you don't care if someone closes, I'm making up a number, $8 million in a month and only worked 15 hours, do you? No, he doesn't care. We become a results-oriented society in the information age. All you should be focused on is, what are my results? What have I delivered? That's all you should be focused on. I don't care how hard you worked. My team hates me for this. We don't deliver something. I'm like, wait. It's like, oh my God, I was up all night. Did you really just tell me that? Because it didn't work, so you're tired and we don't have what we need. So I don't care. We have a thing in my company called complete flexibility, ruthless accountability. I don't care when you come in, when you go home, what you do, but you better damn well deliver. So they work from home. They go skiing on Tuesdays. But boy, anybody go skiing on Tuesday and come in on Friday and they didn't meet their goals is in a heap of shit. Freedom. You have the freedom, but you got to go for it. All right? All right. Look, I can excuse most things, but I can't excuse boring because you choose to be that way. Okay? Look, boring, we live in fear. Fear of standing out. Fear of being different. Fear of being called out. Our ability to fit in is driven out of fear and a desire to be accepted. But that's not fun. That's boring. And we don't like boring. How many people know that person that goes into a restaurant or a bar or comes over to the house or is around and they're like, oh my God, they're so much fun, and everybody wants to talk to them. Everybody got a friend like that? How many of you are that person? There's a couple of you I see that. But guys, come on. Be your authentic self. Get out of your shell. Stop being different. Do things differently. Right? I get a lot of heat on LinkedIn for my language. Right? This is a professional platform. Look, let me tell you what professionalism is. It's a mild form of censorship. Self-censorship. Basically what we've said is these are the rules, professional rules, and therefore you must censor to fit into those. Now don't confuse that with being a jerk. I mean, that's different. Right? I don't go and call people names, but I speak and talk as I authentically am. Some people don't like that. That's okay. I'm perfectly okay with that. Others love it. That's why I have a big following. But don't get caught up in this idea that other people have to tell you how to act. Whenever I have a canned response now, whenever somebody responds to me using an F-bomb or even just shit or whatever on a LinkedIn post, this is a professional platform. We have no room for this. Blah, blah, blah. I simply say, it was once unprofessional for women to wear pants to the workplace. It was once professional for a man, unprofessional for a man not to wear a hat. It was once unprofessional not to wear a suit unprofessional not to wear a suit or a tie. I can go on and on what we once called unprofessional that is perfectly acceptable today. Is there like a Merriam-Webster professional book that I don't know about? Who decides this? So don't get suckered into the trap. Be you. Find out who the authentic you is and be you. And then if that's boring, fix it. And if it's not boring, share it. Because boring people, unboring people attract people to them. Right? People who aren't boring. Who wants to be around a boring person? Who wants to hire their next, what are the people who help loan officers? What are they called again? Yes, that's it. Thank you. Who wants a boring processor working for him? Anybody? Seriously. We don't like boring, but most of us are boring, not because we set out to be boring, but because we're too afraid to stand out. Cut it out. And if you're going to be boring, go do it over there. Guys, this is you. This is you. The 21st century has changed everything. The rules are different. There are no more gatekeepers. There are tools abound that allow you to get out there and build an audience, to build reach, to bring value to people. You don't need his permission. You don't need see that book right there, self-published. I didn't need a publisher's permission. They're actually coming to me and say, oh, you got another one you want to do? I'm like, well, I don't know about that. What are you going to do for me? Right? It's a new world with new rules. So you have one of two choices. Do it the way you've always done it, or start adopting the new rules and figure out how you can make it work for you. The win is in you, not me, not him. The world has changed. It's time to change with it. Peace, I'm out.